You ever notice how the loudest ones always got the least to offer? The ones always running their mouths, always judging, always pretending like they got their lives together while yours is falling apart? Yeah, those. Those are the destroyers. They don't wear capes. They wear fake smiles. They don't carry knives. They carry opinions. You think they care about you? They don't. They're just vultures dressed as friends. Wolves behind compliments. They act close just to get closer to the fire they lit in your life. And when you start to rebuild from their ashes, oh, they hate that. They hate when you ignore them. Because your silence is louder than their noise. It's pressure, it's power, and most importantly, it's peace. But peace don't come easy, does it? Nah. You've got to bleed for it. You've got to walk away from everything that once made you feel seen, even if it means walking alone. Because in the end, it's better to walk alone in truth than be surrounded by liars in disguise. And you've been dancing around liars your whole damn life. They smile when you struggle, but frown when you win. Ever ask yourself why? Because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your progress reminds them of their excuses. You're a mirror, and they hate what they see in their own reflection. So what do? They try to break that mirror. They call you names, say you've changed, act like you're arrogant, all because you stopped explaining yourself, all because you stopped making your pain a public display. But let me tell you something, they were never listening to understand. They were listening to criticize. The moment you gave them your silence, you took away their control. And that's the one thing manipulators can't handle. Losing control over the one they thought they had forever. You want to survive? Ignore them. Let them scream into the void. Let them talk. Let them spread rumors, twist your story, mock your dreams, downplay your victories. Let them. Because their words, they mean nothing in a world where you've already bled to stand. You've already suffered quietly while they laughed. And now they want your reaction? They want your energy? No, don't give it to them. Don't feed monsters. Starve them. Let their bitterness choke them slowly. Let your silence burn hotter than any argument. Because the moment you engage, they win. They're not looking for truth. They're looking for your crack. That weak spot. That opening. But not today. Today, you choose control. Today, you shut the door. And when they knock again, you keep it shut. Not out of spite, out of wisdom. They'll try to guilt you. You changed. Damn right you did. That's what pain does. It chisels you into someone new, someone sharper, someone colder, someone who finally understands that love without boundaries is just self-destruction. So, yeah, you changed. You grew fangs, built armor, and stopped giving second chances to people who never gave you a first thought. That's not cold. That's self-respect. And don't let anyone shame you for that. Because the moment you start defending yourself for healing, that's the moment you give the devil your sword. Keep your sword and use it, not to hurt, but to cut off access. Access to your time, your heart, your energy. That's your currency now. You want to be rich? Stop giving it to beggars who only want to watch you go broke emotionally. They'll destroy you if you let them, but only if you let them. Only if you keep answering. Only if you keep proving. But the real power, it's in indifference. It's in being unmoved. Not because you're numb, but because you've learned. Learn that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Some people only show up to steal your food and criticize the menu. So eat alone. Feast in silence. And when they ask why you stop talking, smile. Smile like a storm is coming. Because when silence becomes your weapon, no one knows where the blow will land. And that fear, that uncertainty, that's what they deserve. Not your tears, not your voice, just distance. Cold, sharp, and absolute. They don't know what you've been through. They just know what they've seen. And even that, they twist it, edit it, filter it through their broken perception. You think they care about the nights you didn't sleep, about the meals you skipped just to make ends meet, the hours you worked while they laughed? No. They only care about the version of you that benefits their ego. And the second you outgrow that version, you're the villain. Suddenly, you're too distant, too focused, too harsh. But what they don't see is the fire you had to walk through just to stand here. They weren't there when your trust was broken piece by piece. They didn't hear your prayers when everything around you was falling apart. They didn't hold you when silence was louder than screams. But now they've got opinions? Now they know what's best for you? Please, let them talk. Let them poison the air with their assumptions. Just don't breathe it in. Because you're not here to impress anyone. You're here to survive. And not just survive, win. You think ignoring them is weak? No, weak is screaming back. Weak is wasting your energy trying to convince people who are already committed to misunderstanding you. Strength? That's silence. That's looking someone dead in the eyes and walking away without a word. That's cutting off the poison without writing a speech about it. Because silence is final. It's surgical. Words can be argued, twisted, reused. But silence? It's absolute. It's a reminder that not everyone gets closure. Not everyone deserves your truth. Let them build their stories. Let them become authors of fiction, while you become the proof that survival don't need witnesses. It needs decisions. And the decision to walk away, that's your liberation. The world loves a performer. But what happens when you stop performing? What happens when you drop the mask and show them who you really are? Flawed, tired, aware, and done. They panic because control is gone. Their version of you no longer exists. And now they're scared. Scared of what you'll do in silence. Scared of who you'll become when you stop begging for their attention. You see, they liked you weak. They liked you emotional, reactive, chasing. But now you don't speak. You just move. And when movement replaces emotion, when action replaces explanation, they crumble. They crumble because they can't bait you. And people who can't bait you can't use you. That's why silence is feared. That's why they'll do anything to provoke a reaction. Don't give it to them. Let them drown in their own noise. This world, it's filled with people who want your seat, but not your struggle. They want your results, but not your process. So the second you start leveling up, they start shooting arrows from the shadows. You're different. You're selfish. You forgot where you came from. No, you remember exactly where you came from. That's why you don't want to go back. That's why you built walls. That's why you raised your standards. Because low standards created those scars on your back. And this time, you're not bending, not folding. You gave too many damn chances to people who took without giving. You spoke too much to people who only listened to twist your words. So now, you speak less. You listen less. You observe. And you execute. And that makes you dangerous. Because a quiet man with a plan, he's a storm in disguise. So let them destroy themselves trying to destroy you. Let their bitterness eat them alive while you build. Because while they're gossiping, you're growing. While they're mocking, you're mastering. And one day, mark this down, they'll look around and realize the one they laughed at became the one they fear. The one they ignored became the one they admire in silence. But you won't even be looking back. You'll be too far gone, too focused, too built for this. And when they ask who helped you rise, you'll say, silence, pain, rejection, God, and the decision to ignore everything that wasn't feeding your soul. That's how you win. Not by proving them wrong, but by no longer needing to. You ever wonder why the ones closest to you become the loudest haters once you start healing? Once you stop answering the late night calls. Once you stop explaining your every move. Once you stop playing therapist for people who never asked how you were doing. That's when the real masks fall. That's when you realize half the people in your circle weren't friends. They were parasites, feeding off your kindness, draining your time, always taking, never giving. And the day you set a boundary, the day you finally say no, suddenly you're the bad guy. Suddenly you're acting different. But guess what? You are different. Because pain changed you. Because heartbreak educated you. Because betrayal graduated you into a new level of awareness. And awareness comes with a price. The price is distance. The price is solitude. The price is losing people you thought would stay forever, only to realize they were just seasonal characters in a story they never helped write. You gotta stop expecting loyalty from people who can't even be honest with themselves. Stop giving explanations to people who never gave you understanding. You owe them nothing, not a message, not an update, not a warning, just your absence. Cold, unbothered, unexplained absence. Because the more you speak, the more ammunition you give them. But when you go ghost, when you disappear without theatrics, that's when they panic. That's when the lies start to collapse. Because they need your presence to validate their narrative. But silence doesn't defend. Silence doesn't argue. Silence just moves. And real power is movement without noise. Real power is doing the work in the dark and letting the results blind them in the light. They'll say you're bitter. They'll say you're heartless. They'll call you a villain. And you know what? Let them. Because they weren't calling you anything when you were breaking your back, trying to be enough. When you were sacrificing your peace for their comfort. When you were breaking down silently while they laughed loudly. They didn't care about your well-being then. So why the hell would you care about their opinion now? You're not here to play hero in someone else's broken story. You're here to rebuild yours, stone by stone, scar by scar. And if that makes you the villain in their version of events, so be it. At least this villain sleeps peacefully. At least this villain ain't begging for love in places that only offered pain. Ignore them. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to walk away. You've tried talking. You've tried explaining. You've tried being the bigger person. And where did that get you? Nowhere but empty. So now you do it different. Now you choose peace over proving. Now you choose silence over shouting. And when they notice the shift, they'll come crawling back. Not because they changed, but because they miss the version of you that allowed them to disrespect you without consequence. But that version, dead, buried, gone. And you're building someone new, someone colder, smarter, untouchable. And you don't owe anyone a resurrection of the old you. Let them mourn. Let them miss. Let them rot in their expectations. You're not theirs to mold anymore. Because the truth is this: they'll destroy anything they can't control. That's the game. That's the sickness. And when they see they can't control you anymore, they'll try to destroy how others see you. They'll lie, twist, gossip, and that's fine. Let them. Because real ones, they'll see through it. And the fake ones, they were never meant to stay. You're not losing anything by walking away from people who were okay watching you suffer. You're gaining your power back. You're reclaiming your time. And that's the kind of revenge no scream could ever deliver. That's the kind of revenge silence hands out like a cold blade. Clean, sharp, final. You know what's funny? The same people who laughed when you were drowning will try to swim beside you when you start floating. They'll act like they always believed in you, like they always knew you'd make it. But rewind the tape. Where were they when you were breaking silently? When your eyes were bloodshot from crying alone in the dark? When your hands were shaking from exhaustion, still building something no one else believed in? They weren't there. They were busy watching, judging, smirking behind screens and whispering behind your back. And now that you're rising, they want credit. They want a seat at the table you starved to build. But here's the truth. Not everyone who watched your struggle deserves to witness your success. Some people belong in the rear view, permanently. And your silence, that's not just indifference, that's discipline. That's refusing to hand out backstage passes to a show they never rehearsed for. You see, ignoring them isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's choosing peace over petty battles. Because every time you stoop to explain yourself, you delay your journey. Every time you argue with a fool, you become part of the circus. And you weren't born to entertain clowns. You were born to shake ground. But you can't shake anything if you're constantly distracted by people throwing pebbles at your back. Let them throw. Let them aim. Let them think they're hurting you. Because while they're busy with their childish games, you're over here building empires in silence. You're over here turning pain into discipline, discipline into structure, and structure into legacy. That's what silence does. It gives you focus. It gives you clarity. And when clarity hits, everything that once distracted you becomes invisible. They'll call you heartless for protecting your heart. They'll call you cold for setting boundaries. They'll call you fake for not explaining yourself. Let them, because the ones who truly love you, they won't need explanations. They'll see your silence and still trust your intent. But the leeches, the parasites, they only understand access. And once you cut it off, they bleed confusion. They spiral because you were never supposed to wake up. You were never supposed to realize your worth. They liked you broken, predictable, dependent. But now you're moving differently. Now you don't beg. Now you don't ask. Now you just move. And that movement, that's what scares them. Not your silence, not your strength, but the fact that you no longer need their approval to breathe. And here's what they'll never understand. You don't hate them. You just outgrew them. You outgrew their mindset, their habits, their energy. And outgrowing someone, that's the most dangerous kind of rejection. Because it doesn't come with drama. It comes with disappearance. One day you just stop showing up, stop calling, stop explaining. And that silence, it cuts deeper than any insult. It reminds them that you're no longer emotionally available to be used. You've upgraded. And not everyone gets access to the upgraded version of you, especially not the ones who tried to break the last one. Let them wonder. Let them think. Let them replay every conversation, every moment. That's their punishment. Your only job now? Keep moving, keep healing, keep ignoring. Because in a world full of noise, silence is the language of power. They'll say you turned cold. They'll whisper that you've changed, like it's a bad thing. But what they won't admit is they're the reason you changed. They pushed you to that edge. They laughed when you were hanging on by a thread. They drained you dry, then mocked you for being empty. So now that you're colder, quieter, sharper, they act like you're the villain. But tell me this, who wouldn't change after being stabbed with smiles? Who wouldn't build armor after being burned with every hug? You didn't wake up one day and decide to be distant. Life trained you. Their betrayal trained you. Their absence when you needed them the most trained you. And now that the training is complete, now that your heart is a fortress, they want the door open again. No. Let them feel the winter you had to survive in silence. Let them feel the echo of your absence like a scream they can't block out. You were loyal, too loyal. You stayed, you forgave, you gave chances until you had none left for yourself. And now your silence is your way of saying, never again. See, most people don't realize what they had until you're no longer there. They took your kindness for granted, thought you'd always pick up, always reply, always explain. They used your heart like a punching bag, thinking it would never rupture. But here's the truth. They never respected your soul because you handed it to them too gently. And now that you've snatched it back, now that you carry yourself like you matter, they're confused. Because broken people hate when their favorite supply source goes quiet. They don't care about your healing. They just miss the version of you that tolerated their disrespect. But that version is buried under nights of questioning your worth, buried under the rubble of fake friendships and shallow love. You dug yourself out of that grave, and you don't owe them resurrection. Let them miss the ghost of who you used to be. Let them beg for echoes, because you're walking in flesh again. And this time, your back ain't bending for no one. Don't let them bait you. Don't let them drag you into old fires with old matches. You've rebuilt. You've grown. You've bled in silence and stitched your soul together with nothing but grit and prayer. That's sacred. That's priceless. And anyone who tries to lure you back into the chaos with guilt, nostalgia, or manipulation, they're your enemy now. Not because you hate them, but because they threaten your peace. And anything that threatens your peace, no matter how familiar, has to go. That's the lesson you didn't want to learn, but had to. The hard truth: not everyone who started with you is meant to finish with you. Some people were the test, not the reward. And you passed the test the moment you stopped responding, the moment you decided your healing is louder than their drama, your future louder than their memories. You don't look back anymore, not because you forgot, but because you finally understand. It was never your job to fix what didn't want to be fixed. It was your job to survive it. And you did. You survived the mental games, the half-hearted apologies, the empty promises, the cold shoulders, the fake support. You survived the guilt trips, the gaslighting, the blame shifting. You survived people weaponizing your love against you. You survived being the bigger person in rooms that only wanted to shrink you. And now your silence is not a sign of weakness. It's your weapon. It's your armor. It's your crown. Because the loudest battles are fought in silence. And your silence, it's not retreat. It's calculation. It's preparation. Because one day, they'll see you again, but not the you they knew. They'll see the version that was born in pain, raised in isolation, and armed with wisdom. And when that version shows up, they won't dare speak. Because by then, you'll be too far, too focused, and too unfazed. You know what scares them the most? It's not your anger. It's not your words. It's the fact that you stopped caring, that you walked away without the need to explain, that you no longer flinch when they bring your name up in rooms you don't sit in anymore. That's what keeps them up at night, the realization that their power over you was an illusion. You shattered the moment you chose peace over attention. You used to beg for clarity. You used to wait for apologies that never came. You used to question if you were the problem, if maybe you loved too loud or gave too much. But now you see it for what it was, a cycle designed to keep you small. They never wanted you healed. They wanted you dependent. And now that you've severed the rope they tied around your soul, now that you breathe without asking permission, they're choking on their own silence. That's the beauty of growth. It never needs to be announced. They'll feel it long before they ever admit it. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself that bled to make others comfortable. You don't owe them your time, your kindness, your shoulder. You gave all that, and they used it like it came free. But it cost you everything: your sanity, your rest, your spirit. And now, they don't get discounts on a heart that took years to repair. They don't get the light you had to fight hell to find again. You walk different now. You speak less. You observe more. Because the world taught you something brutal. Too much kindness in the wrong hands turns into a weapon. And now you're surgical. You don't cut to bleed. You cut to protect. You cut off access. You cut off energy thieves. And that makes you dangerous. Not because you hurt people, but because you finally stopped letting them hurt you. They'll act confused, play victim, twist the story. You disappeared. You changed. You turned your back. And yeah, you did. Because standing there was killing you. Because explaining yourself was draining your soul. Drop by drop. Because love that comes with conditions is just manipulation in disguise. They loved you when you were predictable, when you were always available, when you were easy to guilt, easy to bait, easy to drain. But now you're not. Now you're hard to reach. Now your silence answers their questions before you do. Now your peace screams louder than your presence ever could. And that's the punishment. They get to watch you rise without a seat in your life. They get to watch the flower bloom from the very dirt they tried to bury you in. Because they will destroy anything they can't possess. And when they can't have you, they'll try to poison how others see you. But let them talk. Let them lie. Let them spin webs of fiction. You're not here to convince anyone anymore. The truth doesn't need defending when it's rooted in scars you wear like armor. You earned your silence. You bled for your distance. So protect it. Don't let guilt rewrite your boundaries. Don't let loneliness open doors that only led to pain. Feel the ache. Sit with it. Heal from it. But never go back to what broke you. Let them accuse you of being cold. They don't know the fire you crawled through. Let them say you've changed. They don't know what it took to survive. This version of you, it's expensive. It's earned. It's rare. And not everyone deserves access. So keep walking. Keep ignoring. Let your silence echo louder than any scream. Let your absence write the message you could never say with words. Because one day, when they sit in their regret, when they finally feel the loss, they'll remember not the times you screamed, not the arguments, but the moment you went silent. The moment you closed the door and never looked back. That silence, that's the sound of your rebirth. That's the anthem of a soul that finally chose itself. You ever notice how silence has a way of haunting people louder than any scream could? You don't slam the door. You don't post a farewell speech. You don't tell them what they did wrong. You just vanish quietly. And somehow that drives them insane. Because people like them, they crave chaos. They need a reaction. They feed off drama. And when you deny them that, when you choose stillness instead of rage, it starves their ego. They were ready for war, but you walked away like they weren't worth the battle. And that's what breaks them. Not your fists, not your voice, but the cold, calm realization that they no longer matter enough to disturb your peace. You once screamed, begged, cried. Now you just observe. And there's nothing more terrifying to a manipulator than someone who has stopped playing their game. That's what silence does. It flips the script. Suddenly they're the ones spinning, explaining, grasping for control they already lost. And you're different now. not because you wanted to be, but because life didn't give you a choice. You learned the hard way that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your pain. You gave, and they took. You forgave, and they repeated. You showed up, and they disappeared. So now you're showing up for yourself. You're pouring into your own cup, building a version of yourself that doesn't rely on validation, that doesn't chase ghosts, that doesn't play savior to people who love to drown. You've realized that closure isn't something you get, it's something you create. And sometimes the only apology you need is the one you never received, the one that never came. The silence after all the damage, that's your answer, that's your proof, that's your sign to walk away and never explain why. Ignore them, not out of hate, but because they no longer exist in the world you're building. You've got walls now, not to keep love out, but to keep your soul protected. You've got boundaries, not to be cruel, but because you've been too kind for too long. And people exploited that. They fed off your empathy, your softness, your light, but not anymore. Now, you guard your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Because when you finally clawed your way out of the pit, there was no one there clapping, no one pulling you up, just you, bleeding, crying, crawling, and God. That's it. So why should you open the gates again? Why let the same snakes back into the garden you bled to grow? You shouldn't, and you won't. Not this version of you. This version don't speak for approval. It moves in silence. It's done explaining. And let them watch. Let them keep tabs. Let them wonder if you still think about them. That's their curse to carry. Yours is freedom. Freedom from the cycles, the toxicity, the addiction to chaos. You've unplugged. You've cut the cord. And now that they can't reach you, they're trying to reach others to reach you. That's how desperate the destroyers become when they lose control. They start spreading poison in hopes that someone else will drink it for you. But those who know your heart won't bite. Those who watched your growth in silence will know the truth. And even if they don't, so what? You're not here to clear your name. You're here to build it. You're here to leave proof, not explanations. Let your work speak. Let your peace scream. Let your absence do the talking. That's the kind of power that don't need to be loud to leave a scar. And the best part, one day they'll realize. They'll scroll past your name, see your face, hear your silence in everything you didn't say, and it'll hit them. The weight of what they lost. Not because you hurt them, but because you healed without them. because you chose yourself in a world that taught you that choosing yourself was selfish. But now you know better. Now you move smarter. And now you ignore, not because you're bitter, but because you finally learned anything that costs your peace is too damn expensive to keep. They'll paint you as the villain in their stories, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right. You walked away. You stopped playing the fool. You stopped making excuses for their inconsistency. You stopped swallowing the disrespect they wrapped in jokes and half-hearted affection. And when you stopped dancing to their tune, the music stopped too. The show ended. The spotlight dimmed. And suddenly, they had no one left to perform for. That's what silence does. It ends the game. And the people who only loved you when you were losing, they hate that ending. They hate that you're no longer apologizing for existing. They hate that you don't look back, don't flinch, don't fold, because the version of you they depended on, the one who sacrificed peace to keep dead bonds alive, is gone, dead and buried in the lessons they forced you to learn the hard way. What's left now? A soul sharpened by fire, a heart stitched with scars, a mind that remembers everything, and yet they'll still act surprised, still act like you owe them closure, like you owe them access to the version of you they broke. But here's the cold truth. They had their chance. They had your loyalty, your softness, your time, and they abused it. So now they can sit with the silence. They can choke on the empty space you used to fill. Because your silence, that's the justice. That's the accountability. Not in words, not in confrontation, but in absence. You could scream your truth, but it'd fall on ears that were never listening to understand. So you leave, not in anger, but in clarity. You disappear not because you're lost, but because you're done being found by the wrong people. You don't send warning shots. You don't wave goodbye. You just vanish. And that void, that's where their guilt festers. That's where their memory of who you were becomes their punishment. And don't be fooled by their comeback. When silence turns to strength, the destroyers often return, dressed in fake remorse, painted with false humility. They'll tell you they miss you, that they've changed, that they see your worth now. But what they really miss is control. What they really miss is your attention. Because without you, they have no one left to manipulate. So they come back not because they value you, but because they lost access to the comfort you gave them. But you You've seen this movie before. You know how it ends. You don't need to argue anymore. You don't need to expose them. Let them lie. Let them twist. Let them play victim. Because every word they say is a reminder of why you left in the first place. And this time, you stay gone. Not because you're angry, but because you finally love yourself more than the idea of being loved by the wrong people. And yeah, it gets lonely sometimes. The silence can be deafening. But don't confuse solitude with punishment. Sometimes being alone is the price you pay for not selling your soul cheap. Sometimes being misunderstood is the tax for choosing peace. And that's okay. Let it hurt. Let it burn. Let it shape you. Because the fire you're walking through now is the same fire that's melting away every weakness they fed you. Every lie you believed. Every time you thought you weren't enough. That fire is your rebirth. And when you rise from it, you'll carry a silence so powerful, so unbothered, that no one will ever question your worth again. Not because you told them, but because your presence without explanation will say everything they tried to deny. So ignore them. Ignore their bait. Ignore their games. You've got a war to win. A war within. And it ain't fought with noise. It's fought with stillness, with distance, with decisions they'll never understand. Let them destroy themselves, trying to reach the version of you they can't touch anymore. You don't owe them answers. You don't owe them healing. You don't even owe them hate. Just silence. And when it's all said and done, they'll realize the loudest revenge is living like they never mattered.